What is up, Sober Nation? We are live another Thursday night. Thank you guys for joining us. Tori is going to be hanging out with us tonight. However, she is going to be hanging out in the comments. But in the meantime, I am joined by Devin Reeves. Devin is not a stranger to the show. He was on last year, but we said it then that we wanted him back, and what a better topic to bring you back on than language. And so just to give everybody a little bit of background, first I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Veronica. And again, I'm with Devin, and his background, he has a master of social work. He's a clinician. He's been in the field for a really long time. But what I admire the most about Devin is that even though he's so busy and he has his career, is he's an advocate and he fights on several issues. He's currently employed by Pennsylvania Harm Reduction, and he'll get into his role and like what he does in a little while. But just he's been on the front lines when it came to having these conversations about updating the recovery language and what it all meant. And, I know there's a lot of different opinions on this topic just through reading through the comments. And Devin, I don't know if we explained to you how it usually works, but usually we poll the community on a Monday night. Then Tori, reaches out to the guest and kind of puts together an article if we do have a guest, or if we don't, we, just go ahead and farm the answers from the questions that we asked from the poll. And then we come back on the live and we discuss the article. So basically tonight, I'm inviting you to discuss this article that Tori wrote based on the answers from the poll and based on a conversation she also had with you. Because I know you also were gracious enough to give her some of your time to put this piece together. So Tori's going to drop that in the comments section. And I welcome everybody joining. Hi, Brittany. Hi, Nicole. And so since I'm by myself today, it's going to be a little harder to respond to everybody real time, but I'm going to do my best. So language, it's been a topic. It's been a thing for a long time. But before we even go there, can you tell the audience what you do at the Pennsylvania Harm Reduction and just your background as an advocate and why language, I know it matters to you personally because I've seen you been outspoken about the issue. So if you could kind of start that way, that'd be great.
Sure. What up, Sober Nation? So my name's Devin Reeves, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And for me, that means that I haven't used any drugs or alcohol since August 21st, 2007. I got into recovery because I engaged in a lot of chaotic drug use, and that drug use took my family away from me, took my friends away from me, took my future, my education, and I was lucky enough to have an abundance of access to resources. I was able to get into recovery, go to treatment, go to recovery residence afterwards, go back to college, go on and get a graduate degree. And around that time, the opioid epidemic was really starting to escalate, and I started losing a lot of friends to overdose, and I learned about this medication, Narcan or naloxone. And this is the overdose reversal medication, and it was actually illegal in a lot of places across the country. And I lost my best friend to an overdose, and his father found him with a needle in his arm. And I just figured, that was it. I'm tired of being quiet about being in recovery. I'm tired of sitting on the sidelines. I'm gonna do everything I can to make a difference. And I got together with advocates across the state in Pennsylvania. We worked really hard to make naloxone legal in Pennsylvania, expanded access to naloxone. And that was really my first taste of advocacy. And I felt
That's
like
amazing.
It was super cool. And I got a taste for it. And I worked in the drug and alcohol treatment field for the next couple of years, but really was feeling called to be part of change. And was volunteering a lot of time, working on different initiatives, national initiatives, trying to get the state legislature to fund the Recovery High School in Pennsylvania. And I was really blessed. We were able to kind of collaborate with some other organizations across the state, and we founded the Pennsylvania Harm Reduction Coalition. And what the Pennsylvania Harm Reduction Coalition is it's a group of organizations, syringe service programs, parents groups, treatment centers, and individuals who all work together towards compassionate and progressive policy around kind of drug use in our state. And really what, it's all about for us is flipping the opioid epidemic on its head and really making a difference. And, why language matters so much to me is that the way people talk about people who use drugs really affects the way laws are made and how people get treated. When you close your mind, when you close your eyes and you think about an addict or an alcoholic, before that was you, if you're somebody that isn't recovered from a substance use disorder, before that was your loved one, you thought that that was like the old black dude living under the highway with the brown paper bag. You know, that's what somebody who's an addict or an alcoholic is. And the truth is that somebody that has a substance use disorder, which is the medical term for addiction, there's somebody with a chronic brain condition, right? There's somebody with a mental health concern. And the other big thing about why calling somebody an addict is a bad idea is that it takes out of context the fact that substance use disorder is also, people who have substance use disorder are also affected by structural issues. You know, we're about to roll into Black History Month. And when I think about Black History Month, I think about all the things people of color have done to fight for their civil rights, to get equal access to things. But we still have a way to go. And it's the same way with substance use disorder. You know, people with a substance use disorder have a hard time finding a job. People that are in recovery from a substance use disorder, furthermore, have a hard time finding a job. And that's because of stigma. So if we start changing the way we talk about people, we're going to start changing the way people think about people. And ultimately, we're going to change the policies that really affect people who use drugs and that are in recovery.
Yeah, no, and it's so true. And when you first brought that up, and like when we were first learning that, like I was just so taken aback that the way that we refer to one another can influence laws and the way that we're treated, not just, you know, on a one-on-one basis, but just as a population. And I thought that was so deep. And, you know, I think we've all had our personal experiences with language, with calling ourselves addicts or alcoholics. And I know for me, that was an issue after a while. Like I worked the program and I followed all the suggestions, but you know, after a while, after I had gotten some time, like around 5 years, I really started to struggle with the terms that I was calling myself at these meetings. Like I didn't feel like affirmations to me. They felt like in lower vibration. So like every time I said them, they didn't feel empowering like they should have felt. You know, like there was this, because of what I knew, like I knew that I was saying something empowering, but it didn't feel empowering like the words that I was using, you know, because I'm so much more than just that, you know, than just, you know, somebody who has a disease or somebody with that. Like I'm so much more than that. So when I would say that out loud, like I just felt like put in a box, you know, and that was just me personal and my personal thoughts that I had on it. I'm sure like, you know, this issue has affected people, you know, in different ways. And, you know, some people don't really take issue with it. Again, these are all comments that I saw. I jot some of them down because some people really don't mind, you know, the labels. They don't want to label themselves. And I can see that point of view of saying like, I don't care. I don't want to be labeled. But, you know, then there's also the people that do remind us that words are powerful and what we call ourselves are, you know, matters. So I love the fact that you guys and a lot of other organizations have started to like update the language. There's the research that was done that, you know, proves that when you use this language, outcomes are better. So there's a lot of data and a lot of organizations supporting updating language and changing the language. What do you think is the biggest barrier to us updating the language and actually like starting to use it?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that people who are in recovery label themselves as, you know, I'm an addict. And I just want to be clear with everybody. When I go to a meeting, when I go to a 12-step fellowship meeting, you know, I say, you know, my name's Devin and I'm an addict before I share every time. And I think that's 100% appropriate. And I'm not saying anybody shouldn't do that. But outside of the time at the beginning of that meeting and the end of that meeting, you know, my language is totally different every place else. And
how so?
Well, when I got into recovery, I had to accept that I had a problem with drugs. And the day I actually went to rehab, I said for the first time out loud, I think I'm an addict. And that was a powerful moment for me. I acknowledged that there was a problem. You know, that was like the first part of my first step before I even walked in the door, before I even knew what a 12-step fellowship was. And that was an important clinical and moment in my life, right? But there comes a time in my recovery then that label, that acknowledgement is not enough of my recovery, right? Just using drugs isn't enough, right? I have to build a life. I got to get, you know, move beyond my minimum wage job. I need to go back to school. I need to be a part of my community. I need to, you know, meet somebody. I need to make a family. I need to grow that family. And I'm not saying that my journey should be everybody else's journey, but this was my own personal journey. And it just feels right to me. And I think that, you know, we must elevate our consciousness beyond what worked for a group of white dudes 100 years, you know what I mean? All those
Right.
years ago.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think, like you said, it was something to be said about when you're part of a fellowship, when you're in someone's house, right? Like you have to respect their rules. I think once you're outside of that house, and you kind of just have to, figure out what your own core values are and kind of like your code of ethics, and you stick to that. But, there's something to be said about that. So by no means, I just wanted to be clear so nobody gets offended. It's not about that. Like, we're not saying that. But there is a way to refer to yourself that's just definitely like less harmful. And the stigma, I mean, there's just so much stigma, not just outside of our community, but within our community. One of the issues that some people have in this space is being aware of the actual language that should be used. But because we still need to educate the wider public, when we use those terms, they miss what we're talking about, because they're not used to hearing those terms. That the public and anybody who like searches Google, who hasn't, been so affected as we have by the recovery community or by addiction, they don't know that there are other terms to, so I think we're further away. Like, I think the population is becoming a lot better about being aware, like other like not diseases, but just other things, like they're updating language in other areas of our society. But I think when it comes to addiction recovery, I think we still have some work to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think a great example of where we could do better with language is you'll see somebody during their celebration of recovery or their recovery birthday say, I've been clean for 1 year, for 2 years. And the subtle message there is this person is not using drugs and they're clean, but a person who is using drugs is dirty. And I was never dirty, right? I was not less than. I was a person who was sick and worked hard to get well. And that's how I want people to think about it.
Right. It's not a victim thing. It's not, because there's also the whole argument, like, oh, you use the name, addict or the disease model to hide behind, to sort of shift blame to that. And it's not about that. It's just completely taking, responsibility of your recovery. Right. So what are some things you think we can do to get the word out about this change, aside from using it ourselves? Like, is there anything else we can do?
I mean, I think the biggest thing anybody who watches this can do is make the change yourself, right? Use person first language always. We would never say, that's a schizophrenic, because that sounds just crappy. We don't use the R word to talk about people that have intellectual disabilities. And there was a time when that was the medical term. And in my lifetime, when I was in college, that's what we taught people, right? That was the diagnosis, and the DSM was mental retardation. And saying that, I'm like, sorry, but that was the language. And it was people pushing forward saying that that's stigmatizing, that doesn't work, that's not good language, because that word had been taken by the culture and been used like a weapon, right? Like, that person is the R word. And that, like, wow, that hurts. And we know that the word addict and the word junkie has been used as a weapon. When I had a problem with drugs, when I was in my chaotic drug use, I know I would hear the whispers, oh man, he an addict now. He a junkie, he a basehead, he a dope fiend, and that never felt good. Nobody ever said to me, Devin, I think you have got a problem. I think you're sick, and there's a way to get well. So if each person can commit to using person first language and using the right language and avoiding things that put down people who use drugs, we'll be a whole lot better.
Right. What are some other words? I mean, we know the word addict or alcoholic, like those may be, harmful words to use, but what are some other words that you think are just as bad?
I think that maybe just as not bad isn't the way I would put it. So there was somebody earlier that commented about working at a medically assisted treatment facility, so a methadone program or something like that. And I think that medically assisted treatment is a term that's got a lot of baggage, right? I prefer to talk about, somebody's on medication assisted recovery, medically assisted recovery, or even better, medications for opioid use disorder or pharmacotherapies for opioid use disorder. If I'm sick, right? If I have, the flu or whatever, I'm going to go to my doctor and I'm going to get if I had high blood pressure, right? I'm going to go to the doctor and he's going to give me a pill to help with that. right? And I'm also going to try to exercise and watch my sugar intake, and stay away from red meat. And it's the same thing with the substance use disorder, right? There's medication that can help with that, and then there's also behaviors and choices that I have to make to be part of that recovery process. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that was good. This comment here by Amanda, she's saying, I'm struggling with alcohol. I want to stop. I can't go to rehab because I'm the only worker for our family. I don't know how to do this. We're suffering greatly. The reason why that comment, caught my eye is because of the shame and being the breadwinner, and having a clinician on, right? Like, I feel like we could take on that question. And like, what would be your advice for that individual who feels like, they're the breadwinner, they can't take 30 days, to go to treatment. And so I think when we ourselves are afraid to ask for help, we perpetuate the stigma. But I mean, we're sick, so it really shouldn't be on us. It should be on the people who are better, who are working on their recovery, and others, who are okay, not this chronically ill, to sort of educate, right? So, but what does someone do when they're in that situation?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What was her name that made that comment?
Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. How you doing? A lot of people think that recovery can only look one way, and that's not true. There are many doors to enter recovery. You could go to outpatient treatment. You could talk to a pastor in your life. You could go see a therapist individually. You can go see a psychiatrist or your doctor, or go to 30 days treatment. And I think the best thing you could do is go see a mental health professional and get an assessment, or your doctor, and say, this is what's going on with me and I'd like to get some help. And then start figuring out what options make sense for your life. And that's part of the narrative that we're trying to push back here today. Often recovery is seen as this very rigid thing. We talk this way, we do these activities, and this is the right way that it's done. And it's bled into the larger culture. And you're kind of a victim of that, right? What you know is, if you want to stop drinking, then I got to go away for 30 days of treatment. And that's just not true. Recovery is not a linear process. It's highly individualized. And I encourage you to get help. And I want to say thanks for sharing that in this public venue. And I hope you check back in with the Sober Nation page and let us know how you made out.
Yeah, definitely. Come back next Thursday. I think Tori's on next Thursday. But yeah, we're here every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. So for any of you that need support, I know there were a few people whose comment I put up who have 17 days, 10 days. Congratulations. You can do this. You're in the right place. One of the reasons why we do this is to be of service and to provide this information, because sometimes I feel these are important conversations to have. And what better place to have them than at a page called Sober Nation? I feel like these are the topics we should discuss.
Right.
And just, because there's been some back and forth. And I know there's some advocates who, when they hear someone make the mistake or call somebody, an addict or something of that nature, they get really offended that language is being used. So I think, both sides need to have a little patience with one another, because I think people are trying their best to improve the language and kind of what social landmines to avoid, sort of thing.
There was this one comment that I really liked. Casey Dick said, there's no better medication than prayer, fast, and meditation. And I just want to say, Casey, I think that we can do all the things. We could do meetings, we could do treatment, we could do prayer. It's a toolbox. Let's use as many tools as a person needs to be part of the recovery journey, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm still looking for your comment. There's so many comments right now. The comment you were referring to. There it is. Better late than never.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry, threw that on you there.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, I mean, what else do you think, people should know? Like, what do you say to the people who feel you're being too politically correct? Like, let's say we do take on, your call to action, and we say, you know what, from now on, if you're somebody called, somebody an addict or whatever, I'm sort of going to say something and kind of like school them, whatever. What if they turn around and say, you know what, you're just being politically correct, and dismiss it? What if you've done your part? How do you react?
Well, I think that, the first request is change your language. And before you talk to somebody else about how to talk about recovery, how to talk about substance use disorder, I would definitely encourage you to Google some of the research, John Kelly at Harvard, Robert Ashford, has done some good research. And we'll throw some of those links up in the comments after the video is done. Come back, check them out, because I want you to know your stuff. There was a study done out of Harvard that said it gave all these different behavioral health professionals vignettes. And the only difference between the vignettes was in one series, vignettes is like a fancy word for a short story. In one vignette, it was, John the addict did X, Y, or Z. What should be the consequence? Or John with a substance use disorder did X, Y, and Z. What should the consequence be? And more therapists said John should go to jail when it was John the addict than John with the substance use disorder. So the way we talk actually changes the way we feel about people. And so I know it's not just me that's been affected by the opioid epidemic. I've buried so many friends. I know everyone out there listening, this has touched your life. And if you want to be part of the positive change to, change the opioid epidemic and change our kind of failed drug policy, you should learn how to talk about substance use disorder, learn about effective solutions to our problems, and then go talk to your legislator about it. And you don't want to go to your legislator and talk and say, I'm Devin, I'm an addict. They're thinking you're shooting dope this morning. You want to go in there and say, I had a problem with drugs and this is what it looked like. I had access to X, Y, and Z resource, or I did A, B, and C to start my wellness journey. And we want to see more of that in our community. You could be a powerful change agent. And that's what my life is about today. With our organization, we're looking to train 500 advocates in Pennsylvania to be part of the solution, because I'm tired of my friends dying. I live in a state that had the most overdose deaths in the country by sheer number. We had the third highest percentage of people that died in the state, so per capita. And we have a lot of changes we got to make. And when I go talk to people in the governor's office or state legislators or, secretaries appointed by the governor, I don't go in and say, I'm Devin, I'm an addict. I go out and shake my hand and I talk about being a professional and all the years I worked in treatment, helping people overcome a sickness and that recovery is possible. Those are the important messages.
Yeah, no, I was just reading that comment. Are we overthinking this?
No, I hear you.
And I could see where that person's coming from, but then when you think about like all the deaths and all the things that we also, the other side of it and the dark side of it and the painful side of it, it's worth the overthinking in my opinion.
I agree. And I want to push back on that whole like snowflake idea. You know what I mean? Like politically correct is a bad thing. I don't think politically correct is a bad thing. Not that you think that. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, yeah, everybody keeps saying words do matter. We need to be aware of how we speak about our disease, especially as the newcomers are watching us. Is so true. And thank you, everybody who's been commenting, who's been dropping in and out of the live. For those of you who are watching the replay, we want to thank you for watching too. Even if you didn't get to leave your comment or have your question answered during the live broadcast, we'll be checking in comments. So feel free to leave your question. Or if you have a suggestion for another upcoming topic, we're happy to hear about those as well. Let's see, what are people saying in the comments? I think there's some healthy conversation happening. And that's, I think, part of the process. We need to have these conversations about language and what that looks like and why it's harmful and why we need to shift that. And even if one person makes the change or the commitment and say, I'm going to use this word, then maybe it was worth it, And I think that's hopefully changes how we want it to change sooner than later, just because there's too many people dying. So that's it for me, and that's it for us. Are there any other questions, thoughts, or comments you wanted to leave our people with, Devin?
Yeah, the way we talk about people is so important. We look back at slavery or the way, the white man treated Native Americans or the first people. They dehumanize them with their language. They're savages. We need to save them. And we do the same thing with people who have substance use disorders. They're just addicts. They're just junkies. And we deny them the very thing that allow them to survive. Naloxone, illegal in Pennsylvania. Fentanyl testing strips. Research says that it saves people's lives. Access to sterile syringes. You can't have that. We would rather have people die of HIV or hepatitis C because we don't value them. we have to show people that we have value, that we are full of greatness. You know, for every Einstein out there, I know there was somebody that died with a needle in their arm because we did not make recovery possible. And that person could have cured cancer or split the atom, but we'll never know. And that's why language matters, because I am not less than because I used to use drugs. If anything, my experience with drugs and alcohol has made me a greater person, a better person, able to withstand working 60 hours a week in the Capitol and trying to change laws and change hearts and minds. I'm really proud of my recovery, and anybody who wants to try to make me feel less than can try, but it's going to be hard.
I love it. I love it. And that's the confidence I want us all to leave here with. Devin, do you have a website, any way they can connect with you or how they can find you?
Absolutely. You know, I'd love for you guys to check us out on social media. We're the Pennsylvania Harm Reduction Coalition, PA Harm Reduction on Twitter and Instagram, and I have my own website, Devin Reeves, and I'm also on Facebook. Check me out. Let's get together and be part of the change in your community. Don't be somebody that just likes a comment on Facebook or shares an article. We need everyone that cares about substance use disorder to be civically engaged and to be part of the solution, because it's not going to happen without you.
Oh my God, that was a brilliant commercial. You should have just dropped the mic and ended the broadcast right then and there. I'm not going to be rude, so I will say good night. Thank you everybody for watching, for commenting. We love you. We hope you'll tune back in next Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much, Devin.
No doubt. Thanks a lot. Peace.